something absolutely horrible. That really depends on the values of your nation. But can you give me a time where you feel like nationalism got so far out of control that something needed to be done?
Well, the obvious answer there is World War II and Nazi Germany. The Germans that were killing the Jewish people just wanted a great Germany. They weren't evil people. Now, I'm not saying Hitler wasn't evil, but the average German soldier that was carrying out orders was just being a good German soldier. They didn't really hate the Jews to the point that they were going to kill and murder millions of Jews, but they followed their orders because they wanted to be a good German. And also, they were being good Christians, they thought, because in their churches, they were being told, not all the churches, but in some churches, they were being told, this is what we have to do to be good Germans. This is what God wants us to do. Sometimes to do these evil things, we have to be influenced by a force so much bigger than us that it takes God to tell us to do it. And once God intervenes, or once we are told that God intervened, then at that point, a person of faith has no choice but to follow God. And if they truly believe that God wants them to kill all the Jews, that's what they're going to do. And Hitler helped get Germany to that point. All those German soldiers were not evil. They did evil things. But they were just, I would go to say that a majority of them were just doing German soldier things, which is being a good Christian, being a good German, and follow orders, there was evil people, and it was terrible what happened. But that was nationalism and faith intertwined at a level that became out of control.
And that's important that we draw at least some of those conclusions of the way nationalism could go, because we might not be there yet, at least as a country. But nationalism has kind of begun to take a very ugly turn inside of our nation, where it's leaving the marginalized further marginalized, and the people without voices even more silent. So here we are. You've just given us this wonderful history lesson, which you got as far as education. So as you were hearing this history in college, what was going on in your mind? How were you drawing the connections of where your place in the world was with the story as you were understanding it?
Yeah. So I started online college at American Military University in 2008. And the first time I opened my first history book, I read the first chapter, and then I threw the book across the room and I said, that book is full of shit. Oh. And then I picked it back up and kept reading and realized, holy crap, what did I learn in school? Like, no way, this isn't right. It's telling me that, that the human beings came out of Africa, and I'm sitting here thinking, no, they didn't. The Garden of Eden and all that cool stuff that we learned about in the Bible. And so then it's taken me from 2008, and I get out of the Marine Corps in 2017, and I actually get back in the classroom, and I'm in my advanced level classes at this point in the last 2 years of school. So I'm taking more than just basic history 1000. And then I go and I'm taking these classes and I'm reading and I'm like, man, that's just like what I experienced. Does that mean I'm this person? Or does that mean I'm this kind of person? Or, wow, I can really empathize with these people because I experienced this. But at the same time, who are we talking about? We're talking about people who maybe they were doing something bad. Maybe they weren't doing the right things, and our minds or, in the historian that wrote that book's mind, but I'm sitting here on the other side of that now. And I'm reading that like, man, I just did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Adolf Eichmann was a good parallel to draw such a thing. The gentleman who put all the Jews in a boxcar and went through trial on whether or not his actions were worthy of being put to death. Those kinds of questions are the questions of the banality of evil. It makes it seem normalized on a regular basis. When were you noticing that your, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe not evil, but your direction may have been led askew?
I remember thinking I was in Fallujah in 2004 in April. I was in the initial invasion into Fallujah, and we got ceasefired and pulled out when General Mattis came to town. He went in and did a little patrol. They didn't shoot at him, so he was like, all right, we'll hand it over. We handed it over, and then in November that same year, the Marine Corps went back in to Fallujah and retook the city. And so it was I was reading this book called No True Glory by Bing West, and I started reading it, and it started telling us about all the political actions that were going on inside the city at the same time that I was there. And that kind of led me, like, man, I feel like we were getting jerked around and this and that. And then a couple years later, as that was eating at me for that time, I started thinking about if somebody came to my hometown and surrounded the city and did what we did and invaded the city, going house to house and clearing the houses and stuff, like, would I allow that, or would I stay and fight for what, for my place? And so I started thinking about, well, if I was them, I would have done the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So who are they and who am I? And are we the same? And if we're the same, then why are we fighting?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're fighting, are we hurting each other, or is it still the other? Because on my first deployment, I thought I was on a modern day crusade, like,
right.
That's what I told myself that. I thought, man, God's got me on this mission. First God got me in the Marine Corps. Now God's got me in Iraq. I must have to be here to kill all the Muslims. Man, that's the most retarded thing I ever could have thought. I have so many good
right.
people that I've met in my life that are Muslim. I mean, the community of people that I met while I was in Iraq, there was people there that I would do anything for,
Right. I think we both know one, in fact, Dr. Iman Chasi.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The Imam is a great person, and what him and his followers are doing over at the mosque, they've got properties that they help homeless people
Mm-hmm.
with, and they also have battered women and their children come to these places, and they protect them. And it's like they're doing so much more for the community than our politicians are doing.
Yep.
They're actually trying to fix issues, and we want to sit here and call in names and judge them. There's so much judgment here in Oklahoma specifically. I know that there's judgment in a lot of places, but here in Oklahoma, like, we have Muslim people that don't feel safe. I know a woman that I just talked to the other night, and she's Muslim, and she lives here in Edmond, and she goes straight from home to work. She doesn't like to go get groceries, so she tries to order them, so she can just go do a pickup. She hasn't even gone to the mosque because she's afraid to go, because she doesn't want someone to see her going to the mosque. So she hasn't even like been in her spiritual faith for the 2 years that she's lived here. And so I gave her Imam and Chazi's information and stuff and tried to, help her, so she could feel safe. But I had never even thought about that until she's telling me, like, I don't feel safe. And we live in a safe place. Edmond, Oklahoma is a safe community. And so I was saddened for her. But that's, that's Oklahoma. And that's a lot of America.
Right. Right.
It's because we've been led to believe that, these people are enemies. And
right.
really, they're just human beings that, just like there's shitty Christians, there's shitty Muslims, there's shitty Hindus, there's shitty people out there, and that's what it is. So it's we've created an enemy out of millions and millions and millions of people who just want to be humans. They just want to live their life, and they are not evil, and they are not people who want to kill us, and they just want to live. And now we're trying to, there was another immigration ban that was just passed, and it's against people from Muslim countries. We trying to close our borders to people that are not like us, and it doesn't make any sense because we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you can say what you will about a propaganda machine, but right now I saw an article recently out there by Time Magazine that said that 81% of conservatives actually believe that higher education is leading to the corruption of our society. Now, you've seen what you've seen. And you've gone through your experience of higher education. What would you say to all those people who said, college will just turn you into a liberal?
I'd rather be a liberal human being and care about people, care about other human beings, and care about making our world an actual better place than not. So I think going to get a higher education actually helps you learn more about the world that we live in so that you're not so scared of what you don't know and what you don't understand. It gives you a chance to know and understand those things.
Right.
And so, 81% of Republican or conservatives, they probably, who knows? I won't speak to them and on their education levels, but
well,
it is.
You said something. Let me kind of maybe help you finish the thought. You said something that's based in fear.
Mm-hmm.
That you what you don't know you can fear, but what you do know you can learn to understand.
And that's just it. It's that knowledge that helps you understand that they don't want.
Right. And why is it that that frame of mind clings to the fear so deeply? Is it maybe a deeper embedded theology in the way they look at the worldview? And I'm going to go into some of that in a political morality theory in a later show. And Bradley, I'd like to go ahead and invite you to that. Would you be willing?
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
Okay, perfect. Because I do believe that there's a political morality theory that's kind of an underlining context of what we need to talk about in the next stage of this conversation. But we have run to the end of the time tonight. Bradley, I got 2 emails already from the listeners who have been watching the show. So when you come back on, which might be next week, it might be weeks from now. I think next week we have, yes, we do. We have Sarah Martin from Oklahoma City University who's going to be joining us and giving us some information on disabilities and theologies around disabilities. So, guys, it's a very busy time for us, but we thank you for listening. And Bradley, Annie and I also are going to be talking to you more about possibly a full-time addition to this show if you're so interested. But we're going to talk to you about that more off the mic.
Yeah, I can't stop listening when he's talking.
I know.
mean,
He really does.
It's captivating.
You brought the audience. You might as well reap the benefits. So let's talk to you later. And
Thank you so much, Bradley. I appreciate it. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
no worries, Annie. Yeah, absolutely. Annie Nash, thank you for having me on, and thank you, listeners.
Thank you. Everybody, good night, and thank you for listening to Alpha Nerds. You shall inherit the earth.